So I was just telling everybody that we're going to talk about virtual learning tips and how to make that work. It's obviously like not ideal for anyone. And I think like if you have friends who are teachers, then you're like, okay, yes, I know that it's not ideal for you too. But then when you're in the moment as a parent on the other end of it, I think it's hard. It's easy to lose sight of the fact that it's difficult on you guys' end also. So I think your perspective will be really helpful. So primarily my audience is parents of individuals with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, which is, it's something that we don't really talk about a lot, just, considering the statistics and how common it is. So it affects 5% of the US population, which is like 16 million Americans, if you like do the math, which makes it sound like even, oh my gosh. But it mimics ADHD, and in some cases it mimics autism. And so it's really hard to piece like what is where. And I think sometimes we as parents have a hard time communicating to teachers what the symptoms look like, because it's also a dynamic disability. So we could have like really good days where everything's happening as expected, and then we could have rough days where it looks like a kid doesn't want to do X, Y, or Z. They don't want to pay attention. They don't want to keep track of their homework, which is a huge executive functioning test. And so then we as parents are advocating for a kid that is kind of up and down as far as what you're expecting. I mean, it's hard for us too. I was just on a podcast talking about how it's hard to gauge as a parent what you expect and what you don't expect. Now we're in this place where with virtual learning, we're doing that here and you guys are doing that there. And it's harder to tell there what's going on here. But with something like FASD, that's like, as a teacher, every teacher that teaches any years is going to interact with at least one kid. Only 1% of our population is diagnosed. So it's really uncommon to know that you're interacting with a kid on the spectrum. But for our parents who do know and are operating from that framework, what are some tips that you have found now that you've been doing this for a couple months? So you're basically a professional as to how parents can make virtual learning a little bit less stressful at home.
So the biggest thing I would say is your kid the best, right? You've been with them forever, literally forever. So I would say communicate whatever you can with your teachers that you're working with, whether that's a related service specialist or a tutor or just a special ed teacher or a regular ed teacher or whatever it is. I'm really relying heavily on my parents to clue me into what's going on. Because I have a couple parents that are like, we've been up since 2 a.m. And I'm like, wow, like it's now 11. You've been up almost a whole day. Like and this kid might need a nap, and same thing with like if a behavior was going on or they're just kids fatiguing throughout the day, like just lean on your kid. You see that, that you're seeing it's happening, it's not working out, whatever it is, just communicate that with the teacher. And I think, I'm speaking on my experience, but I think most teachers would be really receptive of that. That today's not a good day, today's just not working, or this afternoon we just need a break. Like, it's gonna be okay if you miss a little bit of time. Like, yes, of course, being in the classroom would be super ideal, but we're doing what we can. Fatigue is going to happen. Virtual learning fatigue is definitely happening. I'm seeing that even with my students. By 12:30, 1 o'clock, 1:30, they're done. Hey, sorry, my dog. Sorry.
I was just expecting it to be a kid, but yeah.
No, it's my dog. So, yeah. Hold on, let me get to that because that's just going to keep happening. Hold on.
Well, while you're gone and can hear me, so yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I think that is like that's what we do. And if we're having an off day, then I cancel whatever appointment. Like we have a weekly whatever, and I'm like, today's not the day that's going to happen. We are not doing virtual learning, but I feel like I would communicate that with teachers. I definitely know people are going to say, oh, well, my teacher isn't having that level of grace on whatever topic. And that's difficult. And I think that's difficult whether you're in person or online. We've definitely had those actually, honestly, most of the understanding I get is from the teachers. I usually have a harder time with the district when we're looking for new services. But it's hard to not sound like you are not worried about education. Like I've heard a couple of my teacher friends be like, oh, well, this kid's just not doing any school when they're at home. And so when you have a kid with off days, as it were, it looks like we as parents are being like, I don't know, school's not really that important, which when we know, like, we're not going to get learning done right now. Like, that's just not where our mind is at. And then my other thing I'm curious about, because we do have an IEP, but I'm my kid's babe. So, when you have accommodation, so like time and a half, do 1.1, like, I don't even know how you do content modification do you guys do like a intervention time? I'm talking Ohio words. I don't know if that's.
No, you're good. So there are like small groups that I will run, just to make sure that kids' goals are being met. You know, we're making small gains, when we can. So yeah, I mean, I was just telling somebody earlier that like I've been doing skip counting right now this week because I have kids that are working on number identification all the way to like multiplication. I got everything in the middle right now. So providing that accommodation and like adapting what I'm teaching, I'm trying to hit somewhere in the middle. So I'm like, okay, if you can count on the number line with me for like just identifying the numbers, that's like the low end of like, are you identifying the numbers that I'm pointing at? And then if you are not, like, you're like way past this, and I'm like, okay, 2 + 2 then gets you to 4. 4 + 2 more gets you 6. Like, and I'm trying to like verbalize that too, because I realize like parents aren't teachers. Most of them aren't on the other end. So like I'm trying to say like, okay, if your kid's not quite there yet and you're seeing they're struggling, try this. And if your kid's way beyond this, try this. Like, I know it's not easy to do virtually. Like, and even just at home, if you're doing your own homeschooling or your own teaching, like you are going to have those days where you're like, yes, my kids got all their numbers. And then the next day it's like, they don't have any numbers at all. Like we have 17, like keep saying 17, you know, and there's going to be those hit or miss days. And we see that even too in the classroom. You know, that's why we take data to see, okay, this day was really good. This day, not so good. We'll just say that's a little outlier. But as far as like interventions and things, been trying to do some small groups, trying to do some one-on-ones if needed. If I'm seeing like this kid is just not where he was supposed to be at all, and his IEP says he's supposed to be here, just trying to catch up myself too. Like, is the IEP wrong, or did we just regress that much since March? Which is possible too. So that regression is going to be another huge factor in it too, where you have to almost check yourself.
Yeah, and it's helpful to hear you explain it from your end where, I mean, always I think it's difficult to manage a lot of IEPs. Like when I went from 1 to 2, I was like, oh gosh, I don't remember whose goal is what. So I can't imagine trying to do it with a whole classroom of kids. And then you're judging how they're doing on a daily basis and adjusting accordingly. And I am 0% jealous of that. That sounds incredibly difficult. But I think that gives good perspective for parents who are like, this is on the IEP and this is not happening. And then how does it look for us to kind of meet in the middle? Not that the accommodation shouldn't happen, but like the ideal accommodation, like small group or even one-on-one for some kids is not realistic right now. And we're doing so much of the accommodations as parents at home because we're like sitting next to the kid. And so seeing it from your perspective, I think is really helpful because this is definitely stressful and frustrating for everyone. This is, I am assuming, not your ideal teaching environment. You're not like, oh my gosh, I'm reaching the masses and it's gonna be great, right? No.
It's interesting. It's definitely expanded me as a teacher a little bit, but I wouldn't say this is like my ideal situation at all. I had a family that requested having a one-on-one come to the house, but a one-on-one has not been assigned to that student previously. There's no behavioral issues. There's no medical issues that would require a one-on-one. So I've been working with my team to find a couple things that we can be doing and supporting and teaching the family, teaching the student, so that they can gain some of those skills that maybe they're missing, that brought up as a parent concern for wanting and requesting a one-on-one to come to the house and basically sit with the kids so that they can mute, unmute, participate in class, things like that. So, you know, we're teaching the kid how to mute, how to unmute. how to
That's
click a
good because
button, things like
those
that. So,
skills they're not, I mean, I know our kids are really tech savvy, but the social aspect of that,
hmm
it's different. I know that's the button. This is when to press that button.
yeah,
Those
this
are
is
two different
when
things.
exactly.
So, and then executive functioning is a big symptom of FASD, and a lot of times why it's misdiagnosed as ADHD or autism because that's just what it is. So,
hmm
when we did virtual learning for a couple of weeks before we gave up, and I was like, I cannot figure out what is where and who and when. Like, this is so confusing. And I know you guys all have to put out your information. So, like in middle school, we're having multiple teachers then feed
Yeah.
stuff, and they tried, but it's complicated. So, are there
Oh, for sure.
any accommodations that we could request at school, or any ways that we as parents could help facilitate that confusion?
For sure. So I would agree. It was definitely a learning curve, like, because there was like 10 different websites we could do math on, or like now we have to go into this area for this science class and this area for social studies, or like you have to click that button and this button. So what I've tried to do, and I think I've seen other teachers doing it, is trying to make like a document where it's like, this link will go to science, this link goes to speech, this
Yeah.
link goes to, and trying to put it all in one place and trying to minimize the outside
Yeah.
websites as much as possible. So again, parents can request that information. Where can I log in so that we can track some data on science or whatever it is. If you see that's something you really are doing and it's like, wait, I have to do asynchronous here and synchronous here, and I don't understand what those two words mean. Exactly. Synchronous is live, asynchronous is by yourself.
Oh, okay.
Those are our teacher terms here. Yeah.
That is very fancy. That's going to be definitely in a master's level course of the teachers who recover from COVID. Well,
Yeah.
what you're describing though, we as parents could make too. If we didn't have like a super helpful on the other end situation, we could ask for the links and then compile them in a place that our kid could easily access. Because I agree that would help simplify.
Yeah, because I think that was the biggest
Passwords, all that.
confusion. It's like there's too many links, too many places to go, too many logins.
Yeah.
If you can get your logins all in one spot, that's easier too. What was the other thing? I was just thinking of something else and I forgot completely. That you guys can totally request and get. It'll come to me.
Okay. So all of that, I think that's super helpful, practical advice and perspective, because the perspective is important too as we try to make all of this happen, right?
Well, yeah, and don't be afraid to ask. Like, worst case, they tell you no, which they shouldn't.
Right.
It's, as long as it's a reasonable request of like, can you compile all the websites and logins in one spot for me?
Yeah.
Great. Or just give me access to it, like in an email, and I can compile it. Like, to make it easier. Oh, I totally remembered now. There are tons of trainings on just YouTube. If you're using Schoology or Google Classroom or Seesaw or whatever other website your teacher has all their things on, I'm sure the district that you're working with or the school that you're working with will be able to access that for you and give you those links. So don't be afraid to ask for it. You're not dumb. You're not silly. Yeah. Nobody's going to look down on you. I know there's some hesitation. Yeah. Just because you don't want to be like, I don't know how to log into a computer. Just ask. If you don't ask, we don't know. So like I had a parent that was like, we haven't come to class because I don't know how to turn on the computer. And I'm like, oh, well, there's a button on the first side of your computer. You should just say power, like, or simple things like that. Just don't be afraid. Don't ask, we won't know.
That's such a good example of even with our kids, because they'll be doing something and we'll be like, why are you doing it this way? And they're like, why would you not do it that way? And you're like, oh yes, you don't know the skill. Okay, let me teach that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, cool. So people can connect with you on your Instagram page, and you put out a lot of really cool documents, and like, I don't really know the technical term, but like it's interactive things. Like I saw your measuring cup one the other day. I was like, we need that. So you can use it at home, or a teacher could use it. So can you tell us more about your shop?
For sure. So I started my Teachers Paid Teacher Store, which is a website where teachers can post their products and their lessons, basically, so that people can access them. You do have to pay for some of them, but I've been working on having interactive digital activities where you can click on something and it'll link to something else. So you can go back and forth and get correct or incorrect depending on where you clicked. But you can find me on Teachers Pay Teachers with Full Sped Ahead, Heather Cassiopo. And that's where you can find most of my lessons and activities and other creative things that I've put on there. I also have a website, which is mostly used as a blog. So if you want to read up on anything on there, it's fullspedahead.com. Otherwise, I'm on Facebook and Instagram the majority of my time. So if you ever need to connect with me, you can reach out through me through messages there.
Yeah, perfect. Well, you may or may not get some parents asking you some questions, but that's super helpful. And for us in the FASD community, I think a lot of times we feel a disconnect with teachers because it's very, very, very rare you would run into an FASD informed teacher that would like really get it, because you kind of have to experience it, I think, to get it. And you're experiencing it. That's the other key. So I think this is a super helpful discussion to kind of give us some perspective. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course. As well. Like I said, if anybody has any follow-up questions, just feel free to reach out. I'm always responding back, and I will respond back. I know some people get DMs and then they never respond, so I do respond. So
yep, that does happen to me a lot when I'm looking for people to do dual lives with. But you responded to me, so
here I am. Exactly.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Bye.
Bye.